How do you create consistent moments of magic? You might see it once in a while, occasionally, but how do organizations create that moment of magic time and time and time again? And we're going to have an interesting conversation today with Shep Hyken. He is the author of The Cult of the Customer. Let me get this up close. All of these are my notes. I took a lot of them because it really made an impression on me. And Shep's going to share with us exactly how to do that. But I want to clear one thing up first, Shep. You used the word cult in the title of the book. And then I know you were really careful to explain what that means in case people misunderstand. So what exactly do you mean by cult?
Well, thanks, Jeff. And by the way, great to be on your show. Thank you for having me and talking about the cult of the customer. So the word cult to some people is a scary word. So this is the updated and revised edition. And I'll tell you a story that happened 12 or so years ago with the first edition. I sent them out to a number of potential clients, existing clients, and one of the books came back with a note: I will never open a book with the word cult written on it. And I looked at it, and it was ironically from a religious hospital organization. Okay, so a faith-based hospital organization. And I actually called the CEO to explain myself. He wouldn't even talk to me. So I wrote him a long letter, and he then finally responded at understanding that cult is not a dirty word. Most people think of cult as some type of religious or fanatical organization. And if you get together every Sunday morning with your friends at the park and go jogging or want to take a bike ride, and you enjoy doing it every Sunday, it's like religion to you, right? In a sense, that is a cult. It's like-minded people with like-minded beliefs that are heading in the same direction. And the other version of cult that I like to think about is the Latin, the term cultus, C-U-L-T, I think it's U.S. or I.S., doesn't matter. You don't get, you're not smarter just because you can spell correctly. Anyway, where am I here? So, which that Latin term actually means care and tending. So that kind of makes sense. And then the whole idea of company culture, well, that falls into it too. So when you put it all together, let's try to create an organization that really takes care of and tends to its customers and its employees.
And it's interesting once you understand something better. The word culture, which I think most of us would agree is a great word, you're saying cult is the root
It's
of that
built
word.
into the word culture. It's who we're about. It's what we believe in. It's the vision and the vision that we're headed toward. That's our culture, and it's like companies should realize, yeah, we're in a cult-like environment, but it's the cult you want to belong to, the cult of the customer.
If I had better graphics, I'd have a star being chased by the rainbow, and it says, "The more you know." Right now, that moment, cult is okay. It can be okay. And one of the things that really stuck with me, and I was reading the book, it had a lot of these yes moments. You could see by all these.
I'm impressed. We have to talk about what some of those are.
We will. But one of them was, I like how you laid out this notion of there's five cults, and the first one, kind of the bottom of the basement, if that's the right way to put it, is this cult of uncertainty, where there's never a consistently great experience. Sometimes there's good experiences, often there's indifferent. And I think you said in the book, that's where most of the experiences, both for organizations and employees, lie.
Yep.
And why is that? Why are we
Well,
all stuck in the basement?
and by the way, every customer of every company starts in the cult of uncertainty. It's
Okay.
unfortunate some of the customers stay there. So, and what I mean by that is, even if you're going to the most recognized brand in the world that's known for service and you've never done business with them before, maybe in the back of your mind, you might be excited to try them out, but you're going, I sure hope it's as good as everybody says it is, right? That thinking is uncertainty, even at its small level. But once you get into it and you start to get aligned with what the company is promising, and by the way, that alignment and that uncertainty could come about at the same time, you start to move into, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you start to move into the other cults. But uncertainty is, I'm not sure how it's going to be, or I'm not sure what it's going to be like the next time. And if there's a problem, even if you're at the highest level, if there's a problem, a complaint that you have with a company, you immediately go back to uncertainty to start to understand how this company might handle their problems. So uncertainty is a base at the best.
You know, there's a term, you call it a mantra, I call it a vision. It's the same thing. It's a clear description of what an outstanding experience looks like. And without that, I can see how uncertainty happens. When I talk to employees and I say, what does your company stand for? What does great service look like? I might get an answer, but it's usually inconsistent. When I look at companies' marketing and I'm trying to figure out, what do you sell? How are you solving my problems? Most of the time, I'm uncertain. So I understand this uncertainty. And if I'm understanding that concept correctly, just creating an idea of this is what we all stand for starts elevating us past that first cult of uncertainty. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and so let me take that to the next step.
Okay.
A vision sometimes is a big statement. A mantra, if you think about it, if you ever took meditation, a mantra is like one word, but I use the mantra as just a short phrase or a sentence at the most. So this, to tie into what you're talking about, if I sit in a meeting with a bunch of leadership of a company, you got the CEO, the directors, the executives, the chairman of the board, whoever, board members, high level execs. And I look at it, even if I look at the chairman and I say, what's your vision or mission statement? They can't recite it. It's 2-3 pages long sometimes. And if you ask one of the leaders who's not like a C-level, they could be the chief marketing officer, they'll struggle with this and get mad at me for asking this question. However, if you create the mantra, or it could be a vision statement, as long as it's one sentence or less, that's easily memorable. And, I list a few of them in the book. The most obvious one, my favorite one, is the Ritz-Carlton. I use it so often as an example, but it's 9 words long. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's a mantra. Or they call it a credo, okay?
Right.
And underneath that, they have 24 gold standards. Now, I bet very few people can memorize all of those standards, but you want to know what the Ritz does? They train everybody to those standards because that's what drives their credo or their mantra, if you want to call it, or their vision, whatever you want to call it. And they do it in such a way that's amazing that they put everybody through basic training, and then every single day, no matter what Ritz-Carlton you're in the world, they're working on one of those 24 gold standards. It's the same one. No, if it's in St. Louis, if it's in the San Diego area where you live, if it's in Abu Dhabi, okay, it's the same standard. And before every shift, the manager talks to them about what that gold standard is, and they spend just a few minutes before they all go to work, and they're constantly being reminded.
I think it's hard to forget things if you talk about them all the time.
Yeah.
And your leader tells you that they're important. I think sometimes people, I send out a weekly customer service tip, and occasionally someone will unsubscribe and say, these are simple, I already know these. And I'll say, right, you do.
Yeah.
Are you doing them? And that's where people sometimes disconnect. So I want to make sure I'm asking you, I think probably the most important part of this, we've established, we've got to have this baseline of a mantra. We're heading in the same direction. But I was a little surprised that the cults are, even the next level of alignment and then going to experience, they all sound pretty good, but the top one is amazement.
Yep.
How do we get to amazement and then do that consistently?
Sure. So let's go there. Let's go through the 5 cults in under 60 seconds. Okay.
I love it.
Cult of uncertainty, we've already discussed. Alignment, that's the one where you're finally understanding what the company's about, and hopefully you're liking it. You may not be liking it, but you're understanding it. Okay. Now you're in experience. And by the way, all 3 of these happen really quickly. Maybe even the first time you do business. You're now experiencing the company. You're going to come back and experience them again and again and again. When you start to recognize the pattern, that it's predictable, okay, you move into ownership. And by the way, if it's predictably unpredictable, you're still in ownership, but you're also in uncertainty at the same time. So you've got a choice at this point. When you're in the cult of ownership, it means you know what's going to happen. And in some cases, I don't know who I'm going to get today. We'll see. It's like a role. That is still a predictable experience. If the experience is above average. In other words, you can say things like, every time I do business with them, they're always so knowledgeable. They always get back to me quickly. Well, now you're moving into amazement, because that word always followed by something positive puts you into the cult of amazement. That's where you want to be. So that's how it works. Uncertainty into alignment, into experience. And once you kind of know what's going to happen next, hopefully it's good, you're into the ownership phase. And when it's predictably above average. And by the way, that's the key. Amazement is above average, but it's above average all of the time. Now, how much above average does it have to be? Doesn't have to be much above average, just a little bit, but it's consistently above average. Once in a while, you get to go over the top and surprise somebody when they call with a complaint and they see how easy it is to work with you. And you might do a little something that they weren't expecting, not necessarily giving them anything, but just the experience. Boy, I can't believe you call me back so quickly. And then the issue is resolved. Well, just calling them back quickly was the surprise, you know? And by the way, it shouldn't be. It should be the way it always is. So once that the customer knows what they're going to experience, and it's a positive and predictable experience, and I'll make it even easier for you. You know who Horst Schultz is?
Yep.
Yes, one of my all-time customer service heroes. And I talked to him last week.
Oh, and Shep, I should pause. I know, but I might not be answering for our audience.
Yeah, so I'll tell you who Horst Schultz is. We've already talked about the Ritz-Carlton. He's the first president and the co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton. He's 80, I think he said he's 83 now. So he's an amazing guy. And he's on boards. And when he left the Ritz, he started the Capella Hotel Group. And the Capella Group, I said, share with me, what is the Capella Group? I mean, how is it better than the Ritz? He goes, Shep, go to the nicest room we have at the Ritz, the most expensive room. That's our basic room. I go, wow, okay, I get it. So he understands the value. Here's what he told me. I've always preached a little better than average all the time. He gave a number to it. He said 10% better. He knew that if everybody would operate at a level of 10% better than average, they would become a world-recognized brand for quality and service. 10%. Now think about it. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is bad and 5 is amazing, you've got you got bad, you've got fair, you've got satisfactory, you've got good, and you've got amazing. What's in the middle? Satisfactory. It's a 3. That's the middle. That's the average. And basically, if you think about what Horst Schultz is saying, and even what I've been preaching, just a little better than average, but 10% better is just a 3.3 on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, when you're looking at NPS, your 7s and your 8s are your average, right? So you want to be 10% better than that average. So that might mean operate at a 7.7 or an 8 or whatever, and you'll be, because it's consistently, in that mode, and that's what customers want. I know I'm jumping now to a topic, but that's what customers really want. If, they want to do business with a place and with the people that they know, like, and trust. And trust isn't just about trusting a person. It's about trusting a process, trusting the experience will happen again and again and again. So that's the key. A consistent and predictable above average experience puts you into amazement.
I think this is the part, and I know you've talked about this concept probably in every book or almost every book.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about it a lot, that amazement, the way you define it, is different than how most people would define it. I think a lot of people talk about these kind of wow moments, these over the top moments, and they quickly realize two things. One is, I don't get an opportunity to do that with every single customer. I just don't. It's not feasible.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic. I was talking to a client. They run apartment communities. And one day somebody saved somebody's dog from a burning apartment. Wow. But what are you going to do? Light everyone's apartment on
Exactly my point. I know you can't go over the top all of the time. The problems don't drop in your lap every single time you interact. No, they drop in your lap on occasion. So whether it's a burning apartment where you jump in to save the dog, or you overhear that it's one of your tenants' birthdays next week, and you think, I'll send them a nice little card and a cupcake. And wow, you've blown them away. You surprise them. But you can't, now that you know it's their birthday, you can put it in your calendar, but you can't depend on knowing that unless you happen to be there.
I'm laughing because what do you do next week? Like, it's your birthday. It's not. It was last week. Well, here's a
Yeah,
cupcake. And now I think the thing that people don't understand is once you do it once, it's not a wow when you do it the second time, or it's not as much as a
yeah. Now it's nice. By the way, you gave me the idea that every meeting I go to, I'm going to bring a cupcake with a candle and a card and go, "Happy birthday!" And if I get lucky, well, then I'm a genius. But if I don't get lucky, and they go, "It's not my birthday. When was your birthday?" It was in January. Now it's July, and I go, "Better late than never."
wow.
But let's celebrate it anyway. Let's just have some fun. I just think it's a great icebreaker.
I love it. All right, it's yours. I think I want to hear how it goes.
Yeah, I want you to try it. You tell me how it goes.
Okay, fair enough. So, Shep, I want to make sure we have time for this because I think I have time for just one more question. And it's funny that you one mentioned the Ritz-Carlton and how they talk about one of their gold standards every single day, so people don't forget. The other thing you talked about was all of these Post-it notes in the book. So I know you're good at magic. I'm not, but here's a little magic for you. I bookmarked one particular page 117 in the book. And what you talk about here is little things that mean a lot. How would I know that you would bring this up? But I wanted to ask you about this concept of leaders kind of being the kind of leader that focuses on little things and how that drives those consistent moments.
Right. So it's a detail. They're little details, and details count. And if you look at some of the, I was really hard on which companies and examples to leave in because I left it. There's one in there about sugar packets on a table. Do you remember reading about that?
I do. 12.
It is,
Of
yeah,
each
12
kind.
of each kind. And they're constantly replenishing and making sure there's 12 of each kind on there. It is such a small detail. And if you think about it, have you ever been to a restaurant where it's like you're looking for the ketchup and it's not on your table, you look at the table next to you on each side, they've got ketchup. Who overlooked that detail? So when a manager or a leader puts a detail into the operation, such as sugar packets on a table, it sets the mindset of other employees to think that way as well. So even though I think it's a moment of magic and by the way, when you understand the thinking behind it, it's great, but there's so many different little things that count. I'll never forget when I was in college and I was working for a gasoline station, and the guy from the home office came by and we were walking the property, and he looked at a sign and he touched it, and then he says, "I need to make a note of that." And I go, "Make a note of what?" And it was just tiny, bent out just a little. And he said, "I'm worried that someone's going to walk by and snag their jacket or shirt on the sign if they brush up against it." I mean, it was barely noticeable, but he noticed it. Well, guess what? For the rest of my entire life, I've been looking at signs. But it's a metaphor for looking for other details that would make a difference. And when a leader does it and they set the tone and they model the behavior, others follow.
I love that point. I think people might be worried about micromanagement. And what you're saying, it's setting the tone, looking at the details, and helping employees understand they need to do the same thing. And I think the other thing that people need to do, if you're watching this, is get a hold of this book and read it. Shep, how do they find it? How do they find you?
Well, you find me anywhere. I'm everywhere. Every social media channel, type my name in. But Hyken.com, Hyken is my website. You can find the book there. You can go on Amazon. I actually, I have a lot of YouTube videos. If you want to go to sheptv.com, that'll get you there. And you'll learn all about me. You'll be sick of me. And spend a whole weekend binge on Shep. Maybe I should get bingeonshep.com. So I don't know.
That's awesome. I'm in for it. I always learn something interesting and fun chatting with you. Shep, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And hey, the cult of the customer, this is the cult you want to belong to.